What if I told you that Egypt's story begins not with pyramids, but with humble farmers and forgotten villages along the Nile's banks, over 7,000 years ago? Before pharaohs wore crowns, before hieroglyphs marked stone, what sparked the rise of one of the world's most iconic civilizations? What kind of power could unite two lands, Upper and Lower Egypt, into one kingdom under a living god? How did this riverine society master stone, create the largest monuments on Earth, and build a legacy that would outlast kings, gods, and empires? Who were the rulers behind the masks? How did a woman become king? Why did one pharaoh try to erase the gods themselves? And what mysterious forces, climate, rebellion, invasion, threatened to bring it all crashing down? From pyramid-building dynasties and dazzling temples, to secret tombs, lost cities, and buried mysteries still being uncovered today. In this documentary, we'll plunge into the rise of ancient Egypt, its divine kings, monumental triumphs, cultural brilliance, and the long shadows of its decline. Stay with us as we uncover the epic saga of Egypt, where time was sacred, power eternal, and even death could not silence a civilization. Imagine the Nile Valley, millennia before the first pharaoh donned a double crown. Around 6000 BCE, small groups of hunter-gatherers clustered along the riverbanks, drawn by the life-giving floodwaters. Over generations, these bands learned to harness the Nile's annual inundation. They cleared patches of papyrus, tilled small plots of land, and began domesticating cattle, goats, and sheep. By 5000 BCE, scattered villages dotted the river, from Elephantine in the south to the Mediterranean Delta in the north. Pottery styles evolved from simple ripple-decorated wares to intricately painted vessels stamped with geometric patterns, a sign of increasing skill and a shared aesthetic. In Upper Egypt, which is the southern stretch, the Naqada culture arose by around 4000 BCE, distinguished by black-topped red ceramics and elaborately decorated grave goods, personal ornaments of shell, ivory, and flint. Further north, in the Delta, the Mahdi Buto culture traded with Cyprus and Canaan, as evidenced by obsidian and wine jars found at Buto. By around 3500 BCE, we find the first hints of social stratification. Elite cemeteries with large tombs, filled with grave goods, ceremonial palettes, cosmetic palettes carved in stone, and tiny mace heads buried under distinctive mastaba-shaped monuments of mud brick. Throughout the Predynastic era, two broad spheres crystallized: Upper Egypt around Hierakonpolis, also known as Nekhen, and Naqada, and Lower Egypt along the delta's fertile marshlands. Each region developed its own ritual traditions. In Hierakonpolis, elaborate ceremonial flint knives, decorated pottery, and figurines suggest a burgeoning priesthood, venerating falcon and lion deities, which are the early forms of Horus and Seth. Meanwhile, in the Delta, fish-shaped pendants and reed hut burial pits point to a different set of local cults. Yet competition over epicenters of power was inevitable. By around 3300 BCE, rulers in Upper Egypt, sometimes called Scorpion Kings, because of the ivory labels depicting a monarch wearing a scorpion emblem, expanded their power northward. The famed Narmer palette, dated approximately 3100 BCE, portrays a single ruler, wearing both the white crown of Upper Egypt and the red crown of Lower Egypt, triumphing over kneeling enemies. This artifact, once buried in Hierakonpolis, symbolizes the unification of Egypt. Although debate continues whether Narmer and Menes refer to the same individual, the effect is clear. Powerful chieftains welded Egypt's two halves into a single polity for the first time. With unification came new institutions. A government centered at Memphis, situated at the junction of Upper and Lower Egypt, took shape. The emerging monarch claimed divine lineage. No longer simply king, he would become king of Upper and Lower Egypt, an intermediary between humans and gods. Writing, first coined as proto-hieroglyphs, appeared on ceremonial palettes and jar labels to record offerings and royal names. The earliest distinct hieroglyphic signs emerged around this period, enabling administration to flourish. By 3000 BCE, Egypt was ready to enter the early dynastic period. In the century following unification, the first and second dynasties solidified the pharaonic state. The kings of the first dynasty, Narmer or Menes, Horaha, Jur, Jet, and Den, ruled from Memphis. They built the first mud brick mastabas, flat-roofed, rectangular tombs, at Abydos and Saqqara, surrounded by cemeteries, where courtiers and retainers were interred to accompany the king in the afterlife. Wooden labels, ivory tags, and early stone steels record the royal names and important festivals. Most famously, the said Festival of Den, celebrated to renew the king's divine vitality. Concurrently, powerful regional governors called nomarchs administered Egypt's provinces called nomes. Each nomarch kept order, oversaw temple lands, and coordinated local irrigation. Inscriptions from Den's reign describe military patrols to the southern border near the First Cataract, highlighting early conflicts with Nubian groups and expeditions into Sinai to extract copper and turquoise. The nascent Egyptian state already viewed resource extraction as vital, sending parties to garner luxury goods. Lapis lazuli for badakhshan in modern Afghanistan, cedar from Lebanon, and gold from Nubia. By the Second Dynasty, pharaohs like Kheskemwi faced regional challenges. Rival factions in Upper and Lower Egypt struggled for control. Intriguingly, Kheskemwi's double name, the two powers appear, may commemorate the reunification of the realm after a brief split. He erected a great mud brick enclosure, a Shunet el-Zebib, at Abydos, containing massive mud brick revetment walls, with reliefs depicting the king standing before the god Horus and Seth, symbols of the kingdom's duality. His tomb at Abydos was among the first built entirely of stone, foreshadowing the monumental architecture of the Old Kingdom. Throughout the early dynastic period, religious ideas crystallized. Pharaohs were seen as Horus incarnate in life, and as Osiris in death, an early glimpse of the Osiris cult that would flourish later. Beneath their shrines, subsidiary chapels honored deities like Neith in the Delta and Wepwawet at Abydos. Priestly families began to specialize, some serving Horus, others Osiris, prefiguring the powerful temple institutions that would later rival royal authority. Yet many mysteries linger. We lack a complete king list for the Second Dynasty. The Turin Canon, a new kingdom papyrus listing earlier names, shows gaps here, so some names are reconstructed from inscriptions. Whether the division between upper and lower governors reflected genuine secession or merely administrative restructuring remains debated. Nevertheless, by around 2686 BC, the trajectory was clear: a united, theocratic, centralized state prepared to erect stone monuments that would mark the dawn of the Old Kingdom. When Djoser ascended the throne in the Third Dynasty, around 2670 BCE, he inherited a kingdom that had established the concept of divine kingship, but still relied on mud brick tombs. Djoser's chancellor or vizier, named Imhotep, a polymath credited with overseeing state administration, recognized that stone offered permanence. Under his direction, the step pyramid at Saqqara became the first monumental stone tomb in history. Rising in 6 receding mastaba-like stages to a height of some 62 meters, Djoser's tomb complex was surrounded by high enclosure walls, ceremonial courts, chapels, and colonnaded halls. Enormous stone columns carved to resemble bundled reeds adorned the colonnade, symbolic of the primeval marsh from which creation emerged. The step pyramid inaugurated the medium of stone for kings' tombs, no longer mud brick, but hard limestone and granite, foreshadowing the building techniques perfected under the Fourth Dynasty. Djoser's reign also saw the emergence of an elaborate royal court. Officials such as the overseer of the Great House and the overseer of the treasury appear in inscriptions, as do names of regional governors. A standardized bureaucracy collected grain, organized labor corvée, and recorded annals of the king's building projects. Inscriptions citing year of the Sedge and B, the symbols of Upper and Lower Egypt, emphasized the ruler's dominion over both lands. While Djoser's internal and external relations remained somewhat opaque, several seal impressions at his tomb complex hint at trade voyages to Nubia for gold and to the Levant for cedar, an early demonstration of foreign resource procurement. The Fourth Dynasty, around 2613 to 2494 BCE, achieved the apex of pyramid building. Sneferu ruled for about 2613 to 2589 BCE, experimented extensively. First, he erected the Midim Pyramid, which began as a step structure and was later encased smoothly, though its outer casing collapsed posthumously. Then came the Bent Pyramid at Dashur. Its lower portion rises at a steep 54 degrees angle, but partway up, the slope flattens to 43 degrees, possibly due to structural concerns. By late in Sneferu's reign, engineers learned from that experience and built the Red Pyramid, Egypt's first true, smooth-sided pyramid, rising some 105 meters high from reddish limestone. Sneferu's reign thus transformed pyramid construction from conceptual experiments into reliable architectural forms. Sneferu's son Khufu, also known as Cheops, who ruled from 2589 to 2566 BCE, built the Great Pyramid at Giza to an original height of roughly 146.6 meters. More than 2.3 million limestone and granite blocks, some weighing up to 80 tons, compose its core and casing. Inscriptions found in the internal workers' village at Giza show that tens of thousands of skilled laborers, supported by rotating teams of conscripted farmers during the Nile's flood, toiled for decades under overseers named Mir and Intef. Recent archaeological evidence, logistically minded workmen's graffiti, and discoveries of workers' meals indicates they were not slaves but paid laborers living in barracks, organized specialists skilled in quarrying, transporting, and fitting the enormous stones. In one of the pyramid's interior chambers, wooden scribal pallets record daily rations of bread and beer for laborers, underscoring the enormous provisioning system required. Khufu's pyramid complex featured a valley temple near today's Sphinx, a causeway sloping up to the mortuary temple on the east side of the pyramid, parallels repeated in his successors' building schemes. Khufu's son Khafre, also known as Khafra, ruled for about 2558 to 2532 BCE, erected the second pyramid at Giza, slightly smaller but sited on higher bedrock. Adjacent stands the enigmatic Great Sphinx, carved from a single limestone outcrop. Its leonine body and the royal visage, probably of Khafre, guard the necropolis. Early theories proposed a much older origin for the Sphinx based on weathering patterns, but the weight of stylistic, inscriptional, and geological evidence aligns it with Khafre's reign. Khafre's successor Menkaure, also called as Mykerinos, ruled for about 2532 to 2503 BCE, built the third and smallest of Giza's main pyramids, rising some 65 meters. The scale reduction perhaps reflects resource constraints or a shift in theological emphasis. By Menkaure's time, Mortuary temples began more elaborate interior decoration of pink granite and alabaster, while pyramid size decreased. Notable, too, is the increasingly elaborate decoration of tomb chapels, with hieroglyphic inscriptions listing offerings, priests, and the pharaoh's Ka, or divine spirit. Menkaur's Valley Temple, made of limestone blocks, contains reliefs showing the king ceremonially inspecting cattle. His mortuary complex introduced sculptural masterpieces, including the famous triad statues depicting Menkaur with the goddesses Hathor and Bath. By the 5th dynasty, around 2494 to 2345 BCE, pyramid construction continued, but at a smaller scale. Kings built sun temples dedicated to Ra, the sun god, emphasizing solar theology. Userkaf and Nusair erected monumental obelisks, aligning with the rising sun to reinforce the pharaoh's identification with Ra. The 5th dynasty pharaohs, Sahur, Neferurker, Nusair, and Unas, inscribed the earliest pyramid texts on Unas's tomb walls. Carefully formulated spells intended to guide the king's journey to the afterlife as a star among the gods. For the first time, these inscriptions marked a shift away from purely external forms of mortuary worship to an inner theology of divine transformation. By the 6th dynasty, around 2345 to 2181 BCE, small volume pyramids signaled waning resources. Pepi II, who ruled approximately in 2278 to 2184 BC, ostensibly reigned for nearly a century, but toward the end of his tenure, central authority fractured. Nomarchs and provinces became increasingly autonomous, guarding local interests and temple wealth. Concurrently, the royal treasury, heavily invested in sustaining the long funerary cults of previous kings, struggled to support large-scale building. As climate shifts led to lower Nile floods and periodic famines, the pharaoh could not quell mounting local discontent. When Pepi II died, though precise records are lost, Egypt slid into the first intermediate period, a time of political fragmentation and cultural decentralization. At the close of the Old Kingdom, unity unraveled. Rival nomarchs in Heracleopolis, Lower Egypt, and Thebes, Upper Egypt, claimed pharaonic power. For nearly a century, tomb inscriptions and literary fragments portray harsh conditions, grain shortages, local warfare, and broken authority. Some local lords interred themselves in smaller mastabas, or rock-cut tombs with elaborate biographical inscriptions that lamented neglect by a distant central king. The economy declined, canals silted, and internal trade shrank. Amid the disarray, Theban rulers of 11th dynasty, such as Intef I, Intef II, and Intef III, gradually extended control northward through military campaigns, challenging the Heracleopolitan kings. By around 2055 BC, Mentuhotep II of Thebes triumphed over his northern rivals, reunited Egypt, and inaugurated the Middle Kingdom. When Mentuhotep II, around 2061 to 2010 BC, ascended the Theban throne, Egypt lay divided. He waged successive campaigns northward, finally capturing Heracleopolis and then controlling the delta's nomes. In his Deir el-Bahri mortuary temple, he built a tiered, terrace structure fronted by colonnades, an architectural innovation foreshadowing the later mortuary temple of Hatshepsut. His tomb, cut into limestone cliffs, featured a central courtyard and processional ramp. Inscriptions record victory over northern foes and the restoration of divine order, Ma'at, after decades of turmoil. Mentuhotep's reunification policies centered on incorporating local elites. He placed trusted Theban administrators in key nomes and allowed the nomarchs to keep some local authority, provided they recognized royal supremacy. He also promoted state-sponsored public works, canal repairs, irrigation management, and temple restorations, especially at Dendera for Hathor and Abydos for Osiris. Art and inscriptions from his reign show a vivid, almost expressive style. Reliefs depict the pharaoh upright on a boat, punishing rebel chiefs, while priests and soldiers look on. By Amenemhet I, circa 1991 to 1962 BC, originally a vizier under Mentuhotep IV, a new dynasty established its capital at Ichtoi, near modern Lisht, to oversee both Upper and Lower Egypt. Amenemhet's reforms demonstrate an intensified central bureaucracy. He created a royal core army, no longer reliant on provincial levies, appointing family members as governors. His stela inscriptions commemorate campaigns into Nubia near the Second Cataract, securing gold and trade routes. He also dispatched expeditions to Punt, likely modern Eritrea or Ethiopia region, for incense and ivory, illustrating an expansion of Egypt's foreign horizon. Around 1971 to 1926 BCE, the son of Amenemhet I, Senusret I, continued building, most notably the White Chapel at Karnak, whose stone blocks recorded every Egyptian nome, symbolizing a politically unified land. He ordered enlargements of Karnak Temple, reinforcing the cult of Amun. In Lower Egypt, he built fortresses at Buhin and Mergissa to control Nubian trade and secure Egypt's southern border. Trade flourished with Byblos, Lebanon, for cedar wood, and diplomatic correspondence, ephemeral though it was, indicates contact with the Mitanni and Babylonia. Under Amenemhet II, expeditions to Punt, northern Sinai, and Asia Minor increased. Stone tribute statues, such as those found at Thebes, depict Asiatic tribute bearers presenting gold, ebony, and lapis lazuli. Amenemhet II also initiated mining expeditions to Sinai turquoise mines and Egyptian turquoise workshops, demonstrating a growing state interest in luxury materials. The zenith arrived under Amenemhet III, around 1860 to 1815 BC. He completed the massive Hora pyramid near the Fayum oasis, renowned for its internal labyrinth, described by Herodotus as containing 3,000 chambers, though most lie buried under sand today. At Lisht, his pyramid complex featured delicate red and black granite casing, opulent reliefs, and richly furnished burial chambers. Most strikingly, Amenemhet III undertook a large-scale reclamation of the Fayum Basin. He built a dike at Merimd to trap Nile floodwaters in a man-made lake, today's Birket Karen, transforming marshland into fertile fields. This project, one of the world's earliest examples of large-scale hydraulic engineering, enabled increased agricultural output, supporting an expanded population and providing grain surpluses for trade. Literature and art blossomed. The Instruction of Amenemhet, a wisdom text probably composed near the end of his reign, admonishes his son on governance. The Tale of Sinew, a poetic narrative recounting an official fleeing Egypt and later returning, reflects a cosmopolitan worldview. Tombs of high officials at Beni Hassan and Asiad display murals of daily life, wrestling, agriculture, marauding Asiatic nomads, and naval battles. Statues of Senusret III show him with a somber, weathered visage, a departure from Old Kingdom idealism, hinting at the heaviest burdens of kingship in turbulent times. Despite these achievements, by around 1800 BCE, central power faced renewed provincial challenges. Nomarchs in Middle Egypt and the Delta began to assert hereditary authority. Meanwhile, external forces, Asiatic peoples known as the Hyksos, began settling in the eastern Delta, drawn by Egypt's wealth. Around 1782 BCE, as Egypt's centripetal strength ebbed, the Hyksos wrested control of towns like Avaris. By the 13th dynasty, Egypt entered the second intermediate period. At the apex of the Middle Kingdom's decline, foreign settlers, later known as the Hyksos, from the Egyptian Hyksos, rulers of foreign lands, migrated into the delta. Archaeological layers at Tel El-Dabeh, ancient Avaris, show Hyksos-style pottery, burial customs, and architecture, all reflecting Syro-Palestinian affinities. They introduced new military technology, the composite bow, horse-drawn chariot, and improved battle axe. These innovations gave them a decisive edge over local rulers. By around 1650 BCE, the Hyksos established the 15th dynasty, ruling Lower Egypt from their capital Avaris. They appropriated traditional pharaonic titles, king of Upper and Lower Egypt, while worshipping Semitic storm gods like Baal, alongside Egyptian deities. Meanwhile, in Upper Egypt, native dynasties of Thebes, 16th and 17th dynasties, persisted, maintaining loyalty to Ammon and Horus. Kings such as Nepimbeth, also known as Neferhotep I, and Second Retau of the 17th dynasty, campaigned against Hyksos garrisons. The conflict culminated under Kamose, who ruled for about 1573 to 1570 BC, whose victory Steele described a surprise raid on Avaris, cutting off Hyksos supply lines and proclaiming Amon-Re's favor toward Theban arms. With Kamose's early death, his brother Ahmose I ruled around 1570 to 1544 BCE, took up the war. After a protracted siege at Avaris, he expelled the Hyksos by capturing their fortified citadel. Ahmose then pursued them into southern Palestine and chased their last ruler to Shruhan, destroying the city and ending Hyksos aspirations. With that, Ahmose reunited Egypt and founded the new kingdom, vowing never again to be vulnerable to foreign rule. When Ahmose I consolidated power, he set Egypt on a path of imperial expansion. He refurbished shattered temples at Thebes, Karnak, and Luxor, re-established administrative centers, and launched campaigns into Nubia to reclaim gold mines and trading routes. Many of his biographical inscriptions appear on temple walls, boasting of his capture of Napata, Kush's religious capital, and his construction of defensive forts like Semna near the Second Cataract. His immediate successors, Amenhotep I, ruled for 1544 to 1524 BCE, and Thutmose I, ruled for 1506 to 1493 BC. Extended Egyptian influence deeper into Nubia and northward into modern-day Syria and Palestine. Under Thutmose I, battalions marched past the Euphrates River, Egypt's first recorded campaign there, asserting dominion over Mitanni and subduing rebellious princes. He also initiated temple expansions at Karnak, leaving behind colossal sandstone obelisks, inscribed with his victories. Hatshepsut, who ruled for about 1473 to 1458 BC, daughter of Thutmose I, and wife of her half-brother Thutmose II, became regent for the young Thutmose III. Fearless and shrewd, she styled herself king, complete with a false pharaonic beard, commissioning a grand mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahri, built into the limestone cliffs. Her temple reliefs narrate a legendary expedition to Punt, likely in modern Eritrea or Ethiopia, bringing back more trees, exotic animals, gold, and ivory. Traders returned with frankincense, ebony, and incense, fueling religious rituals in Thebes. Hatshepsut also oversaw domestic prosperity, prosperous Nile floods, extensive quarrying operations at Aswan, and stable trade with Byblos and Nubia. Thutmose III, who ruled for 1479 to 1425 BC, stepson of Hatshepsut and co-regent during her reign, launched at least 17 military campaigns, culminating in the famous Battle of Megiddo around 1457 BC, against a coalition of Canaanite princes. His 10-month siege of Megiddo and victory carved his renown. Later, annals of Thutmose III detail the spoils: cattle, silver, bronze, cedarwood, and list conquered towns from Beirut to Aleppo. By the end of his reign, Egypt's borders stretched from the Fourth Cataract of the Nile to the Euphrates River, forming a buffer zone of vassal states whose tribute, wine, wheat, lapis lazuli, and more, flooded Egyptian storehouses. With wealth came unparalleled temple building. Amenhotep II ruled for about 1427 to 1401 BC, subdued Nubian revolts and brigand raids in Canaan, erecting stelae at Karnak to commemorate his hunts of lions, antelopes, and hippos in the marshes. Thutmose IV ruled for about 1401 to 1391 BC, erected the famous dream stele between the paws of the Sphinx, claiming the god Horus appeared to him in a dream, promising kingship if he restored the Sphinx's eroded body to new glory. Amenhotep III ruled for about 1386 to 1353 BC, presided over a golden age of architecture and diplomacy. He sent beautiful diplomatic marriage of the king's daughter letters, the Amarna correspondence, to Babylon, Mitanni, and Assyria, exchanging gifts of fowl, horses, lapis, ivory, and gold. His mortuary temple at Karnak, second only to later Ramesses II's, featured huge colonnaded courts and towering stone statues. At Bubastis, he erected twin obelisks of red granite, each weighing over 200 tons, commemorating his Jubilee festivals. During the reign of Amenhotep III, the priesthood of Amon-Re at Thebes grew supremely powerful, controlling vast lands and workshops. To counterbalance them, Amenhotep, son of Hapu, Amenhotep III's architect, began building a private mortuary temple, but remains best known in later tradition as a deified sage. Toward the end of his reign, Amenhotep III enlarged the temple of Aten near Thebes, an early sign of his son's impending revolution. Son of Amenhotep III, Amenhotep IV ruled for about 1353 to 1336 BC, was born into a court steeped in Amon worship. Early in his reign, however, he broke with tradition. He adopted the name Akhenaten, effective for Aten, shutting down the cults of Amon, Mut, and other gods. He moved the capital to a specially built city called Akhetaten, today's Amarna, on a desert plain, oriented east to west to align with the sun disk. Statues and paintings from Amarna depict Akhenaten, long-limbed and androgynous, revering Aten under a sky of protruding glories, the sun's rays ending in little hands. He and his queen Nefertiti appear emerging directly from Aten's rays, underscoring their status as sole intermediaries between Aten and the people. Priests of Amon were stripped of power. Their temples at Karnak were abandoned or defaced. The artistic style at Amarna changed radically. Figures became elongated, with full bellies and curving hips, capturing a sense of motion and intimacy unknown previously. The royal tomb for Akhenaten's daughters has wall reliefs of the royal family, playing with their children, the first intimate, quasi-private scenes in Egyptian art. Akhenaten's religious revolution, however, ignored foreign affairs. The Amarna letters, a cache of cuneiform tablets from Amarna's archives, plead with Egypt for military support, Mayors of Canaanite city-states begged for chariots to fend off Habaru, or raiders. When Akhenaten died, around 1336 BC, Egypt's northern frontier fell into disarray. His successor, Tutankhaten, later Tutankhamun, ruled for about 1336 to 1327 BC, was a child. Guided by advisors Ai and Horemheb, Tutankhamun reversed the religious upheaval. He abandoned Akhenaten, re-established worship of Amon, and changed his name to honor Amon. The capital moved back to Memphis. Tutankhamun's tomb reveals extraordinary treasures: a solid gold death mask, gilded chairs, chariots, and 1,405 small funerary amulets. The wealth suggests that the restored priesthood of Amon had quickly regained economic might and could commission lavish funerary equipment even for a short-reigned pharaoh. Ai briefly succeeded Tutankhamun, ruled for about 1327 to 1323 BC, but his reign was too short for major contributions. Horemheb ruled for about 1323 to 1295 BC. A former general, assumed full pharaonic power and undertook a damnatio memoriae campaign against the Amarna heresy. He defaced references to Akhenaten, erased inscriptions at Amarna, and expunged Aten's name. He reformed the administration, reinstating the powerful office of vizier, reorganizing provincial administration, and consolidating military command under trusted officers. Under Horemheb's rule, Egypt reconsolidated, yet the new kingdom's vigor would surge again under the 9th and 10th pharaohs of the 19th dynasty. The 19th dynasty began with Ramesses I, ruled for about 1295 to 1294 BC, and his son Seti I, ruled for about 1294 to 1279 BC, both military men. Seti I completed additions to Karnak and erected the Great Hypostyle Hall, with its 134 colossal columns carved in relief. He also captured Kadesh and established a buffer zone in Canaan. His tomb in the Valley of the Kings, decorated with vivid astronomical ceilings, testifies to a blossoming of royal mortuary doctrine. Ramesses II, commonly known as Ramesses the Great, ruled for about 1279 to 1213 BC, reigned for 66 years, achieving legendary status. Early in his rule, he launched campaigns to retake lands in Canaan. The Battle of Kadesh, around 1274 BC, against the Hittite king Muwatalli II, is among the earliest battles recorded in detail. Though both sides claimed victory, Ramesses portrayed himself as overwhelming, inscribing accounts on temple walls, his poem of Pentor, and depicting chariots thrusting into enemy ranks. A decade later, he and Hittite king Hattusili III formalized a peace treaty, effectively stabilizing the Levantine frontier. This Treaty of Kadesh, recorded on clay and bronze, is the earliest known international peace agreement. Ramesses II embarked on a vast building spree. His Ramesseum, mortuary temple, on the west bank of Thebes features a colossal statue of himself, over 20 meters tall, carved reliefs of Assyrian campaigns, and inscriptions hailing him as Khnumyakra Sephara. In the Delta, he built a new capital called Pyramus, modern Cantor, replete with storehouses, factories for metalworking, and a military garrison. In southern Egypt, he carved two nearly identical rock-cut temples at Abu Simbel, one dedicated to himself and the gods Ptah, Ra-Horikti, and Amon, and another to his wife Nefertari and goddess Hathor. The Abu Simbel colossi stand over 20 meters high, gazing out over Lake Nasser. In the courtyard at Abu Simbel, a solar alignment occurs when sunlight penetrates the sanctuary's inner sanctum on 2 days of the year, Ramesses' birthday and coronation day, illuminating statues of Ramesses and the sun god. This feat of archaeoastronomy underscores the pharaoh's role as Horus on earth and his kinship with Ra. Interiors of Rameses's many other temples at Abydos, Esna, and Karnak exhibit repeated royal cartouches and scenes of subjugated Nubians and Libyans, sentinels of an empire still reaching its apex. Late in his reign, monumental statues of Ramesses II adorned the Ramesseum, and he kept erecting colossal shrines, even in his 80s, attesting to his enduring vigor. Upon Ramesses II's death, around 1213 BC, he was succeeded by Marinta, ruled for about 1213 to 1203 BC. Marinta faced incursions from the Sea Peoples, enigmatic groups of mariners who had caused disruptions in the eastern Mediterranean. He claimed victory in reliefs at his Marinta Victory Stela at Luxor, depicting a marching column of Exodus-like masses. Marinta also recorded his Israel Stele, the first extra-biblical mention of Israel, listing rural Canaanite towns laid waste under his campaigns, indicating Egypt's diminishing hold in the Levant. The 20th dynasty's first half seemed to keep Ramesses' momentum. Seti II and Setnacht, ruled for about 1203 to 1198 BC, struggled with court intrigues, palace coups, and graphic tomb defacements in the Valley of the Kings, outright attempts to erase rivals' funerary decorations. Ramesses III ruled for about 1186 to 1155 BC. The dynasty's second great pharaoh repelled Sea People invasions in the Battle of the Delta, erecting reliefs at Medinet Habu that display chariots drowning in water. Grand processional temples at Thebes, like the Mamisai, Earth House, and Medinet Habu, honored his divine son Amon. Yet his reign also sowed seeds of decline. Labor strikes among his workmen at Deir el-Medina, workers' village for tomb builders. In year 29 of his reign, show famers refused to deliver grain rations, a first recorded strike in history. After Ramesses III's death, court corruption deepened. Ramesses IV, Ramesses V, and Ramesses VI each reigned briefly. Inflation rose, the treasury struggled to pay temple priests, and tomb robberies increased. By Ramesses XI, ruled for about 1107 to 1069 BC, the central government had little real power. Provincial high priests of Amon in Thebes controlled Upper Egypt's economy, commanding armies of temple staff and client families. Meanwhile, Libyan-descended chiefs in the Delta gained autonomy. Rivalries among priests and commanders during the twilight years of Ramesses XI precipitated a fracturing that ushered in the Third Intermediate Period. After the vacillating rule of Ramesses XI, Egypt split into two major power blocks. In Lower Egypt, a line of Libyan-descended pharaohs, 21st to 24th dynasties, reigned from Tanis, adopting traditional titles but relying on mercenary troops and alliances with local chiefs. In Upper Egypt, powerful high priests of Amon at Thebes wielded king-like authority, controlling vast agricultural lands and gold mines. Their tombs at El Asasif and Deir el-Bahri rivaled those of pharaohs in scale and wealth. During the 22nd dynasty, a succession of Libyan princes, like Shoshenq I, also called as Sheshonq I, attempted reunification. Shoshenq I ruled for about 943 to 922 BC, marched north into Israel and Judah, recorded in the Bubastite portal relief at Karnak, commemorating his campaign in 925 BC. Some scholars link his incursion with the biblical Shishak, who attacked Jerusalem in year 5 of Rehoboam. Though his control over the south was tenuous, he laid claim over all land through ritual and monument, restoring a semblance of centralized power. In the 23rd and 24th dynasties, Competing local rulers controlled cities like Thebes, Tanis, Bubastis, and Leontopolis. Meanwhile, in Nubia, or Kush, a powerful dynasty arose at Napata. King Pi, also known as Pianki, ruled for about 747 to 716 BC. A Nubian's conquest of Thebes signaled the start of the 25th dynasty, a Kushite renaissance. Pi's triumphant stela from Jebel Barkal, in modern Sudan, proclaims him king of Upper and Lower Egypt, as he marched north and restored temples. His successor, Taharqa, ruled for about 690 to 664 BC, oversaw a revival of monumental construction at Karnak. He built pylon gateways, obelisks, and a grand colonnade close to the Temple of Amon. Taharqa also sent armies into Canaan to support local coalitions against Assyrian advances. However, Assyria, under kings Esarhaddon and Ashurbanipal, launched campaigns into Egypt. In 671 BC, Esarhaddon sacked Thebes, dismantling Egyptian temples and deporting artisans. Taharqa briefly retook the city, but by 664 BC, Ashurbanipal's siege forced the Kushite leaders to retreat to Nubia. Local rulers, Psamtik I, also known as Psammetichus I, of Sais, seized the opportunity, allied with Greek mercenaries, Carians, and Ionian Greeks, and established the 26th dynasty, marking the start of the late period. Psamtik I ruled for about 664 to 610 BC, reunited Egypt from his capital at Sais in the Western Delta. Under his rule, Egyptian art and architecture deliberately imitated the revered forms of the Old and Middle Kingdoms. Tomb reliefs showed blocky statuary reminiscent of the 12th dynasty, and block-nosed sphinxes guarded temple entrances. Psamtik's reign also saw increased Greek mercenary presence. Phocian Ionian and Carian soldiers served as personal guards, a harbinger of deeper Greek involvement in Egyptian affairs. He reformed the army, instituted tolls on foreign ships at Suez, and reopened quarries in Sinai for turquoise and copper. His son, Necho II, ruled for about 610 to 595 BC, built a canal from the Nile to the Red Sea, the precursor to a future Suez Canal, and founded a flotilla that plied the Red Sea for myrrh and incense. Necho also attempted to curb Babylonian expansion in the Levant, but was defeated at Megiddo by King Josiah of Judah. By 525 BC, the Achaemenid Persian Empire under Cambyses II turned its ambitions on Egypt. According to Herodotus, Cambyses employed a clever tactic at Pelusium, posting live cats, venerated by Egyptians. Along the front lines, Egyptian defenders hesitated to harm a sacred animal, leading to capitulation. While this anecdote may be apocryphal, evidence confirms that by late 525 BC, Persian forces occupied Memphis and deposed Psamtik III. Egypt became the Persian satrapy, a Persian province, of Mudra, overseen by a Persian governor called a satrap, such as Bagabazes and Ariana. Under Persian rule, Egyptians experienced changes but also continuities. Temple institutions, like the cult of Amon at Karnak, continued receiving state stipends. Cambyses II arguably supplemented priests with rations and oversaw temple spending to legitimize his reign. Meanwhile, Persian kings adopted Egyptian royal iconography. Darius I ruled from 522 to 486 BC, is shown on inscriptions wearing the double crown, offering libations to Amon. Inscriptions at the Temple of Philae, dedicated to Isis, record Darius's building projects. He added pronaos columns and chapels to Mammothite complexes. Periodic revolts erupted. Native resistance led to periods of independence. In the late 5th century BC, Amyrtius of Sais ruled approximately 404 to 399 BC, successfully rebelled against the Persian rule of Artaxerxes II, establishing the short-lived 28th dynasty. This was followed by the 29th dynasty, including rulers like Psamathes, ruled around 393 BC, and the 30th dynasty with Nectanebo I, ruled 380 to 362 BC, and Nectanebo II, ruled 360 to 343 BC. These native dynasties maintained Egyptian autonomy until 343 BC, when Artaxerxes III reconquered the region, ending the last native dynasty and forcing Nectanebo II to flee to Kush, Ethiopia. Although under Persian domination, Egyptian priests often administered local affairs. Temple economies managed agriculture, courts, and even the issuance of loans and contracts, continuing traditional responsibilities. Late period art consciously revived Old Kingdom and Middle Kingdom motifs. Statues of gods, obelisks, and column shrines at Dendera and Edfu were built to imitate archaic forms, designed to appeal to a populace yearning for stability. When Alexander the Great, having conquered Persia, entered Egypt unopposed in 332 BC, Egyptians greeted him as a liberator from Persian rule. He was proclaimed pharaoh in Memphis, donning the double crown before the statue of Ptah. Alexander's visit to the oracular temple of Ammon at Siwa Oasis reaffirmed his divine status. The oracle purportedly declared him son of Ammon-Re, merging the Greek and Egyptian divine genealogies. Shortly afterward, in February 331 BC, Alexander founded the city of Alexandria on the Mediterranean coast, strategically sited at the western edge of the Nile Delta. Designed with a grid plan by the architect Dinocrates, Alexandria rose swiftly. Its harbor drew merchant ships from the Aegean, Levant, and beyond. When Alexander died in 323 BC in Babylon, his generals, the Diadochi, vied for spoils. Ptolemy the First Soter, one of his companions, seized Egypt with a standing Macedonian garrison in 322 BC. By 305 BC, Ptolemy claimed the title pharaoh, founding the Ptolemaic dynasty. He inherited existing temple networks dedicated to Ammon, Isis, and Osiris, but also established Hellenistic institutions, the Library of Alexandria and the adjacent museum, drawing scholars from around the Mediterranean. Under Ptolemy, the second Philadelphus ruled from 285 to 246 BC. The library expanded to house over 400,000 papyrus scrolls, making Alexandria a hub of mathematics, medicine, astronomy, and literature. Euclid wrote his Elements here. Scholars like Eratosthenes calculated the Earth's circumference. Herophilus performed anatomical studies in the city's medical schools. Ptolemaic rulers adopted Egyptian religious customs to legitimize their rule. Statues show Ptolemies wearing double crowns, smiting foes before Ammon. They established Serapia, temples to the god Serapis, a syncretic deity combining Osiris, Apis, and Hellenistic gods like Zeus and Hades, aimed at uniting Greek and Egyptian worshippers. Festivals such as Baikitin, feeding the spirits of the dead, and Opet, honoring Ammon-Re, continued under Ptolemaic patronage. At Edfu, the Temple of Horus was built from around 237 to 57 BC by Ptolemy III, its soaring walls covered in pristine hieroglyphs narrating mythical rites. Remarkable evidence of a continuous priestly tradition, despite foreign rule. Yet Greek and Egyptian elites lived largely in parallel universes. In Alexandria, Greek settlers maintained their own neighborhoods, the Palestra, gymnasium, and Greek clubs, speaking Koine Greek, while native Egyptians continued to farm along the Nile, speak Demotic, and for official context, hieratic, script on temple walls, and honor pharaonic religious customs at rural shrines. During the Ptolemaic era, Egypt was a wealthy provider of grain and papyrus for the Hellenic world. Ptolemy III's campaigns against the Seleucid Empire during the Third Syrian War, dated from 246 to 241 BC, temporarily extended Ptolemaic control into Syria and Anatolia. However, by Ptolemy IV's reign, from 221 to 204 BC, Egypt faced rising economic strain due to court opulence, temple subsidies, and military expenses. Social tensions surfaced as native Egyptian cultivators resented heavy taxation to fund Ptolemaic building projects. Revolts later erupted, particularly in the Delta and Upper Egypt, during the reign of Ptolemy VIII Euergetes II, also known by the nickname Physcon, from 170 to 116 BC. The dynasty's final decades revolve around Cleopatra VII, ruled from 51 to 30 BC. Educated in philosophy, literature, and astronomy, Cleopatra spoke multiple languages, including Egyptian, making her the first Ptolemaic ruler to do so. She sought alliance with Rome's power brokers. In 48 BC, she met Julius Caesar in Alexandria, forging a political and romantic alliance that led to the restoration of her throne after Caesar intervened against her brother Ptolemy XIII. Their union produced Ptolemy, the 15th Caesarion. After Caesar's assassination in 44 BC, Cleopatra aligned with Mark Antony. Together, they governed eastern provinces as co-rulers, Cleopatra as Queen of Kings. Their confrontation with Octavian, the future Augustus, culminated at the Battle of Actium, 31 BC, where Antony's fleet, bolstered by Cleopatra's squadrons, was defeated. Following Actium, Antony and Cleopatra fled to Alexandria. Facing inevitable capture, Antony committed suicide by stabbing himself with a sword. Upon hearing false news of Cleopatra's death, Cleopatra, refusing to be paraded in Rome, committed suicide. Legend claims she succumbed to an asp's bite on August 12, 30 BC. With her demise, the Ptolemaic line ended, and Egypt became a Roman province under Octavian's rule. Ancient Egypt's record remains remarkably rich, yet many puzzles endure, captivating historians and archaeologists alike. From the engineering feats of the pyramids to the enigmatic fate of its last native ruler, these mysteries continue to spark scholarly debate and investigation. Let's delve into some of the most intriguing and unresolved questions about this ancient civilization. The construction of the pyramids remains a subject of fascination and contention. Although ramp theories, whether straight, zigzagging, or spiraling, now dominate scholarly consensus, the specifics of ramp gradients, workforce organization, and quarry logistics are still hotly debated. Recent discoveries of wooden sled diagrams, featuring channeled water pathways, suggest ingenious lubrication methods to move massive stones, yet no single universal approach has been definitively proven, leaving room for ongoing exploration and speculation. Equally perplexing is the origin of the Great Sphinx. Most scholars attribute its construction to Khafre's reign, around 2558 to 2532 BC, aligning it with his pyramid complex. However, alternative theories, such as the water erosion hypothesis, propose that the Sphinx's weathering patterns could predate Khufu's pyramid by millennia, hinting at a far older monument. Geological studies offer mixed results. Some erosion features suggest rainfall weathering, while most Egyptologists argue that wind-blown sand and minor flooding suffice to explain the patterns. Without further stratigraphic evidence, The Sphinx's timeline remains anchored to Khafre, though the debate persists. The search for unlocated tombs and lost pyramids adds another layer of mystery. The tomb of Cleopatra VII, one of history's most famous figures, has never been found, with rumors among local antiquities dealers pointing to a lavish chamber near Taposiris Magna, west of Alexandria. Yet systematic excavations have yielded no conclusive proof. Beyond Cleopatra, several small pyramids and Queen's pyramids from the 18th and 19th dynasties remain buried beneath shifting desert sands and encroaching urban sprawl, their subterranean chambers hidden by centuries of change, challenging archaeologists to uncover them. The fate of Nectanebo II, Egypt's last native ruler, ruled for about 360 to 343 BC, is another enigma. After fleeing to Nubia following the Persian reconquest, historical records suggest he may have plotted a counteroffensive from Kushite territories, only to vanish from history thereafter. No tomb or precise location of his death has been identified. Archaeologists have uncovered stele depicting Nectanebo II in Napata and Meroe, but whether he met his end through natural causes, prolonged exile, or assassination remains a tantalizing unknown. The Amarna artistic revolution, sparked by Akhenaten's radical religious shift, continues to puzzle scholars. Was his move to monotheism driven by personal conviction, palace intrigue, conflicts with the Amun priesthood, or even climatic factors that elevated solar worship? Though his reforms collapsed shortly after his death, and his artistic legacy was largely erased from official records, the tens of thousands of Amarna letters preserved in his archives illuminate the political dynamics of the Near East, underscoring Egypt's role among the era's great powers. The true motivations behind his revolution, however, remain elusive. Finally, collapsed climatic shifts offer a broader environmental mystery. Paleoclimatic studies indicate periods of reduced Nile flooding, possibly due to shifting monsoon patterns, around 2200 to 2000 BC and again around 1200 BC, coinciding with the Old Kingdom's collapse and the Late Bronze Age turmoil. Sediment cores and pollen samples from the Fayum region provide tantalizing clues, yet correlating these environmental changes precisely with historical events remains a complex challenge, fueling active research into their impact on Egypt's history. These enduring mysteries and scholarly debates highlight that, despite its well-documented past, ancient Egypt still guards many secrets. As new evidence emerges and investigations continue, we may one day unlock the answers, deepening our appreciation of this remarkable civilization. The ancient Egyptian civilization, thriving over roughly 3 millennia, owed its success to the agrarian stability provided by the Nile cycles and a unique blend of religious and political authority, which crowned pharaohs with divine status. This remarkable civilization left an enduring legacy through its extraordinary achievements in monumental architecture, writing systems, mathematics, medicine, and administrative practices, influencing the ancient world far beyond its borders. The monumental architecture of ancient Egypt evolved from the understated elegance of early mastabas to the breathtaking precision of the Great Pyramid. These structures are a testament to the Egyptians' advanced surveying techniques, with the pyramid's base leveled to within a few centimeters of perfection. Their builders also demonstrated a sophisticated grasp of mathematical concepts, incorporating approximations of pi and employing right triangles to ensure structural integrity, creating monuments that still inspire awe today. Equally significant was the development of the hieroglyphic script, which began as rudimentary proto-writing in the Predynastic era and blossomed into a complex system of over 700 signs by the Middle Kingdom. Hieroglyphs were used to inscribe religious texts, official decrees, and daily records, preserving the essence of Egyptian life and belief. The Rosetta Stone, dating to 196 BC, later provided the key for modern scholars to decode this intricate script, revealing a wealth of knowledge that pharaonic scribes had safeguarded for centuries. The administrative systems of the pharaonic state were a marvel of organization, managing vast archives that included papyrus records of tax receipts, grain inventories, correspondence, and temple endowments. Salaried scribes and local councils oversaw the storage of surplus grain in state granaries, a system that supported ambitious building projects, maintained temples, and provided relief during famines. This efficient bureaucracy ensured the stability and prosperity of Egyptian society. In medicine and science, ancient Egyptians excelled with innovations documented in texts like the Edwin Smith Papyrus, around 1600 BC, and the Ebers Papyrus, around 1550 BC. These medical papyri outlined surgical procedures, pharmacological recipes, and empirical diagnoses, reflecting a sophisticated understanding of the human body. Physicians specialized in fields such as ophthalmology, dentistry, and midwifery, while astronomers tracked the heliacal risings of Sirius, Sopdet, to predict the vital Nile floods, aligning their science with the rhythms of nature. Egypt's cultural influence spread through trade and conquest, both shaping and being shaped by regions like Nubia, Canaan, Crete, and later the Greek world. Egyptian artistic motifs reached as far as Mycenae, where the royal funerary mask echoes Egyptian styles. During the Ptolemaic era, Greek rulers embraced Egyptian religion, with the cult of Isis gaining devotees as far away as Rome, a testament to the widespread appeal of Egypt's cultural heritage. Despite foreign dominations by the Persians, Greeks, and Romans, Egypt's religious traditions endured with remarkable continuity. Temples dedicated to deities such as Amon, Re, Ta, Hathor, Osiris, and Isis stood firm, upheld by priestly lineages tracing their roots back to the Old Kingdom. These priests preserved ancient rituals, chants, and astronomical calendars, which governed everything from agricultural festivals to the grand Opet festival in Thebes, ensuring Egypt's spiritual legacy outlived the pharaonic dynasty itself. All told, ancient Egypt's story is one of adaptation, from disparate predynastic villages learning to farm, through millennia of dynasties erecting timeless monuments, to foreign conquerors adopting Egyptian ways. They believed that through careful adherence to Ma'at, cosmic order, and reverence for the gods, life would flourish. When pharaohs failed to uphold Ma'at, through political strife, neglect of irrigation, or cult shifts, Egyptians remembered. Their literature mourned times of disorder in the First and Second Intermediate periods and looked back fondly to the centralized stability of the Old and Middle Kingdoms. Today, as scholars sift through the sands, unearthing new tombs in the Valley of the Kings, deciphering dusty ostraca, broken pottery from Deir el-Medina, and exploring the submerged city of Heracleon beneath Abu Qir Bay, ancient Egypt continues to reveal new secrets. We may yet discover Cleopatra's tomb, the missing libraries of Akhetaten, or Ramesses II's hidden shrines. Until then, the story of ancient Egypt remains both one of the most thoroughly documented civilizations and one with enduring enigmas. How they precisely moved those great stones, where the tombs of key figures remain, and what private aspirations drove pharaohs like Akhenaten to shatter centuries of tradition. In the end, the pharaohs of Egypt, divine shepherds of the Nile, left us unparalleled monuments, a rich written record, and an example of how a civilization can endure for millennia by balancing political power, religious authority, and the annual rhythms of a river that sustain them all.